How is everybody? Good. So we're going to do the lesson you were supposed to have last week. Just saying. 2 Timothy chapter 3. We'll do a little review because it's been 2 weeks. And I know nobody remembers stuff because we're all so busy. So last week we were in 2 Timothy or 2 weeks ago, 2 Timothy chapter 3, and we went through verses 1 through 9. And if you remember, what we were talking about together was kind of ever since Jesus left during Pentecost, you've been at end times, right? So anytime they talk in the Bible about end times, there's no specific start or beginning. The moment Jesus left began the end times. They are going to get worse before he returns, obviously, and you can read about it in the book of Revelation where it comes to a pinnacle. And that's what everybody looks for to mark the end times, but that doesn't really make logical sense because that's the end of the end times. So 1 through 9 is like this warning about all of the stuff that's going to happen and the way people are going to act and the way they're going to treat each other. And we went through all of those, and, in verse 2 it says, lovers of self, lovers of money, boastful, arrogant, revilers, disobedient to parents, ungrateful, unholy, unloving, irreconcilable, malicious gossips, without self-control, brutal, haters of good, treacherous, reckless, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, holding to a form of godliness, so acting like they're godly, although they have denied its power. And he gives a warning, it says, avoid such men as these. And so the idea is that as we interact with the world, you're going to see a whole bunch of ugliness, and that's just a matter of fact, okay? And then we talked about the Christian motivation. When I was brought up in church, I was brought up to hope. I don't even know how to explain this in words. I was brought up to want the return of Christ. And I think from a Christian perspective, although we should desire Christ more than we desire anything else, we should not want to speed up his return because he's put us in charge of reaching more souls for his kingdom. And so it's kind of like, your boss asks you to finish a spreadsheet at 4:45 and you're like, nah, 5 o'clock's coming, right? We're not doing our job as Christians. And so I don't ever want to wish the return of Christ because there are people that can still be saved. I know it's a strange approach because we're told to absolutely love Christ and want to be in his presence and can't wait to meet him and all that stuff, and that's true. But we as Christians have to think like Jesus does, and we have to think about all of the people that don't know him yet. And so it gives this warning. It says stay away from all of these ugly people, right? I don't mean ugly as in ugly looking, I mean ugly as in ugly acting. And you get into this thing where you're like, okay, so if I can't be around people that are mean and nasty and ungodly and whatever, then how am I going to reach people for Christ? How am I going to do my job? And it kind of stops there. And the last example he gives, which I kind of covered but kind of didn't want to cover because I don't really want to talk about it because it's not in the Bible, but there's 2 names in there, and we believe it's the 2 people that led everybody to start worshiping the golden calf. And he says, stay away from those people. So it's like a warning for you to stay away from things that are not biblical, right? Let me ask you a question. How do you know if something's biblical or not? If it's not in the Bible, it's not biblical. That is 100% correct. How do you know if something's in the Bible or not? You have to read it. And I know I talk about this all the time, but be honest with yourself, right? I don't need to know because I don't care. I mean, I do care. Don't get me wrong. But be honest with yourself. Are you reading your Bible at all? And if you are reading it enough? And that's just something that you've got to internalize, right? There are people that I know that profess to follow Christ, that regularly go to church, that have not cracked open a Bible, I'm pretty sure their entire lives. You cannot have a relationship with Christ unless you read the book he left you. It's impossible. Because you don't know what the requirements are of the relationship. So what is happening, and unfortunately it's happening more in the Christian church than it is outside of the Christian church, and that is people are being led away from Christ because they are following teachers who are not following the Bible. And so churches are starting to preach all of this stuff, right? I had a discussion with my wife about 2 weeks ago, and I think she kind of got her feelings hurt, and I understand why she kind of got her feelings hurt. But again, this isn't about you and me. The Bible states that women are not to lead church. I didn't make that up. And if I was a woman, I would follow it to a T, just like I follow it now because I'm a man. Right? And she has a very dear friend who is getting ordained, who is a female. I don't have a problem with that. You can be ordained as a female. You just can't lead a church. Why? Because the Bible says so. Not because Chris, who's, masculine jerk, says so. I don't care. Right? It doesn't mean that women can't teach in a church. It doesn't mean that women can't lead people to Christ. It means that women cannot lead a church. End of story. There is nothing in the Bible about environmentalism because it's not biblical, because it turns you into worshiping earth. So what is the Catholic Church doing? They're pushing environmentalism as part of the church. Jesus said, I gave you the earth to conquer and to use, right, as a resource. It doesn't mean you abuse it. But we've got people telling us that toilet paper is a bad thing because it cuts down trees, and obviously they don't live in Southeast Georgia because we know that trees are nothing more than glorified corn. They're grown, cut down, and replanted, right? You're not doing any harm whatsoever. There's nothing wrong with paper. It's using a resource that the earth regenerates. There's nothing wrong with, using water. There's nothing wrong with collecting rainwater from the sky. Yet all of these things are being turned against us. And then, to make it even worse, and I don't want to get into all this, but we're being pushed to electric cars, electric this, electric that, when the pollution that it takes to create the batteries and stuff for these electric cars is way worse than you running a gasoline engine. And all of the pollution that pulling oil out of the ground causes. Way worse. So it's this false teaching, right? It's this false prophet thing. When they talk about it in the Bible, anything can be a false prophet, but it's anything that leads you away from God. So if God said man and woman are to be joined together and go and be fruitful and multiply, and we teach that it's okay to not get married, and it's hear me out, it's totally acceptable for the majority of the population to not have children, because that's what they're pushing now too, right, to reduce the footprint of humanity, then we're at that point going against what the Bible teaches. So that becomes a false prophet. And so he warns, he says, stay away from these people. And the problem is we're not staying away. The Christian church is the worst about it because nobody's reading the Bible and they don't know what's in it. So when they see somebody standing up here teaching the Bible, They just take it like it's gospel instead of doing their own research. The only person I've ever had that has ever pushed me in here, aside from people who are involved in the ministry, is Pedro. I'll say something one Sunday, and he'll come back next week, he'll be like, what do you mean by that? Where is that in the Bible? I love that, because I know he reads his Bible and he's looking for it. I think that's fantastic. I love that. But you can't take what, even me, who you trust, you can't take what I say and believe it 110% unless you're going to check for yourself. So he tells us, look, all of these people that are convincing you that you're not a sinner, that life is okay, that whatever, you don't need to read your Bible, you don't need to go to church, you don't need to do all of these things, whatever they push now. You're being led by a false prophet away from God. Are there people, I'm a firm believer that you don't have to go to church to be saved, okay? In fact, I believe that there's a group of people that are better off if they never set foot in a church, because a lot of churches turn people away from Christ. Out there, I said it, right? Does Christ want us in church? Yes. Does he want us to let go of all of the things that we bring from the world into the church? Yes. Do we have the definition of church completely wrong? Absolutely. We totally do. We've totally messed it up from the beginning. So when you look at this and you're like, well, so what are we supposed to do? How am I supposed to reach people? If I'm supposed to not fight off, but you know what I mean. If I'm supposed to not call Jesus, come back now. If I'm supposed to run around and get as many souls as I possibly can, and yet I'm not allowed to be around people that are false prophets and false teachers and things like that, how am I supposed to reach people for Christ? And I think this is where we're at. This church, this is where we're at. And I'll give you an example. This church has not grown in 3 years, 4 years. Not one stitch. Unless somebody's been born, church has not grown. Think about that. Now, why is that? Is it because we're fighting a losing battle? Or is it because we, myself included, I'm not above y'all, is it that we don't know how to show people Jesus? I'm convinced it's we don't know how to show people Jesus, because this is what we've been taught. What have we been taught? How do you show people Jesus? Give me some examples. Feed them. That's a big one, right? Where do you feed people at? Church, sure. You have like a potluck and invite your neighbors. Y'all ever go to church potluck? Anybody? I've been to a few. I don't eat, because I don't eat other people's food, because I got a germ problem. But I've been. Did it change my life? No. Do you feed people at homeless shelters? Anybody here ever volunteered at a homeless shelter? When did you volunteer? When? 7 years ago? Pedro? So, okay. So it's not us 100%, it's society. They've lost respect for the church. Mm-hmm. Right. So handing out Bibles, is that a way to reach people for Christ? Sure it is. But have you noticed that everything we've talked about is a physical action? It's you going and doing something. And the thing I take away from this is, and hear me out. I know none of us here are anywhere near Jesus. Okay, I got that. In comparison, I mean, how many people did Jesus go and seek? Good answer. He said 12. Even that is questionable. I would say none. They sought him. Remember the crowds? He'd be like in his boat, and he'd be like going across the sea, like, and all the people would be running around to get to him before he got to the other side. Excuse me. Remember when John the Baptist died? And he tried to go up on the mountain to be by himself? And they were like, everybody's looking for you, and everybody's whining and crying because they're hungry. And he's like, fine, I'll come back down. Town to town, Jesus would go. He wasn't looking for people. People sought him. Okay? So here's the thing. What we do when it comes to the church, especially in this church, and this is something I'm going to be addressing for the next couple of weeks on Sunday mornings, is what we do is we try to go out and get people to come to church. How's that working out? It's not. Because here's the situation. You either have everybody you know already goes to church, right, Janice? Almost your entire family already goes to church somewhere. Some of them have been here before. Some of them have moved on from here. All of them go to church somewhere. Almost all of them. All of your friends go to church, or you've asked them so many times that you don't dare ask them again because you're sick of them saying, yeah, they'll come, and they never come. Because you're going and seeking them. They're not seeking you. So why are they not seeking you? Now again, I started this out by saying, I know we're not even close in comparison to Jesus, but why are they not seeking you? Say that again? We're not living like Christ? How about you're not reflecting Christ? Just don't take it personal, because I know people do, right? But think about your everyday life. I'm just as guilty as you are. I'm not going to stand here and defend myself any longer. I'm just going to speak the truth, okay? Think about your life. How many times a day are you reflecting Christ, and how many times a day are you reflecting yourself? You're supposed to be the light in the dark. That's right. So if somebody's in a dark place and they want to get out of that dark place, where do they go? They go to the light. This church and many other churches are not growing because they're no longer shedding light. And so, if you stop and you think about it, you read about all of the horrible things that Paul says about the world, right? I'm going to run through them one more time, and then we'll get into the new scripture. Lovers of self. You ever not wanted to come to church because you're tired or just don't feel like going, or it's raining, or you're sad, or you're happy, or who are you loving at that point? Yourself. Lovers of money. It's not a problem in this church, I don't think. I haven't talked to Janice about it in a while. But lovers of money. Most churches fail because they're not supported by their congregation. Right? Even if everybody that came to church, even if they just gave $5, it would change the church dramatically. But people don't, because we go with this mentality. Well, I'm poor. I don't have any money. Okay, well, who are you relying on? You relying on you, or are you relying on God? Now, I'm not telling you that to give beyond your means, right? But if you've got $5 and your choice is either give it to church or, go blow it on burritos at Taco Bell again, maybe you should trust in God and give it to church, right? Don't go in debt. Make sure you can pay all your bills. Money's a very sore issue with me when it comes to church, as y'all know. Boastful. I don't think too many of us in here are boastful, but I think you can be. You ever tried to tell anybody about church and gone about it the wrong way? And you come off sounding like somebody who thinks they're better than everybody else? Arrogant, same thing. Revilers I'm not going to get into because that word still messes with me. Disobedient to parents. We talked about that. Honor your mother and father. Ungrateful is one that hits me hard. And we're going to talk about that tonight. How many times in your life have you complained about stuff that has no bearing on reality or permanency? I was on vacation, right? 2 weeks ago now? 1 week, whatever. And one of the days it rained. And I was like, this is stupid. I take 5 days off, and one of the days that I take off, it's raining. 1 out of the 5, it rained. Ruined my it didn't actually, but ruined my vacation, right? That whole day I was just stuck doing nothing stupid. I'm in the Keys, it's beautiful, and it rained. How about the 4 days that it didn't rain, you jackwagon? How about the fact that you made it down there and back home in one piece? That you didn't die on the road driving that gigantic thing you were driving down there? How about the fact that you didn't get attacked by a shark or stung by a murder hornet or, I don't know, eat some poisonous food or something? Grateful. How about grateful that I got the chance to go and sit in the rain in the Keys? Because if somebody came to me today and they were like, hey, tomorrow you can go to the Keys for free, I'll take you there and drop you off in an airplane, but it'll be raining all day, but I'll go. Ungrateful. Unholy. I don't even want to touch that one tonight. Unloving. I think this is a big one for a lot of people. How many people do you think you care about that you actually don't care about? And again, this is just you keep between you and yourself, right? How many people you swear that you care about, but actually you don't care about because you don't do anything about? And there are people that you can't do anything about. Don't get the two confused. Okay? There are people that you have in your life that have a battle to fight, and you can't help them, and you have to stand back and let them fight it. I'm not talking about those people. How many people do you swear up and down that you love that you actually don't? That makes you unloving, because who did Jesus love? Everyone. Without question, right? He even loved you at your worst moment. So look, he gives this thing, and it's this huge thing, and it's like, this is why things are wrong, and this is why everything's failing, and as time goes on, it's going to get worse, but it comes in waves like we talked about 2 weeks ago, right? So there'll be, like, the Great Awakening was probably a great time to be alive in this country, when everybody was going back to church, and everybody was treating others with respect, and things were, they were nice. They were up at the top. We're down in the bottom. It's your and my job to get us going back up the hill, right? Back up. So in verse 10 he says, now you followed my teaching. And when he says that, he doesn't mean it like, I taught you, I'm Paul. He means you followed the teachings of Jesus. Do you in your life, generally speaking, follow the teachings of Jesus? Hopefully the answer is yes. If it's not, work on it, right? Don't crucify yourself. He already crucified himself. You don't have to. But start working on it. But generally speaking, we try, right? We try to live a life that follows Jesus' teachings as best as we're capable. He goes on, he says, you followed my teaching, conduct, like how I behave myself, right? Paul's conduct was fantastic in most aspects. He had a couple whoopsies, as did all the apostles. Purpose. Paul had a purpose, didn't he? Faith. Let's talk about those real quick. Let's talk about purpose. You are wonderfully made. You're not wonderfully made to sit on the shelf and look at. You're wonderfully made because you have a purpose. You have to accept that. I don't want to get hung up on that. I don't want to talk about it because I've talked about it so many times in this building that I'm pretty sure you've got it. But you have a purpose. And if you don't believe that, then you're already you're already treating yourself as unholy. Because if you have a purpose of God, that makes you holy, correct? You were created by Him to do something. That makes you a holy thing. All right. So faith. We talk about faith all the time. But I want to talk about faith from a different aspect. So a lot of times we talk about faith like this, like, if you believe it, if you believe in God and you think He's leading you down this path, you can do it. Isn't that usually how we kind of describe faith? And we also describe it as believing in something that you haven't seen yet, right? So we believe in heaven. Has anybody here been to heaven? No, because you wouldn't come back, right? So we believe in heaven, but we've never been. That's faith. How about doing what God wants regardless of the consequences? Is that faith? To me, that's more important faith than believing in heaven even though you haven't been there. Because does anybody here have any idea what heaven looks like? No. We read some weird description in the Bible. They're like, the roads are clear, but they're also gold. And you're like, I can't even compute what that even means in my little marble brain. I have no idea what heaven looks like. But if I do something that God is asking me to do, regardless of the consequences, all of a sudden now I have faith. What is my faith in? That He'll take care of me. So regardless of the consequences, He'll protect me. He'll make sure that I can continue to do His work. So let's say that you have an incident at work where you stand up for God and you lose your job. And if you weren't faithful, you wouldn't stand up for Him and you wouldn't lose your job. Therefore, you'd be protected and taken care of by yourself, right? You'd say, I'm going to surrender God so that I can keep my job, so I can keep my family fed, and I can stay in my house. God is saying, you don't think I can handle that? You see, what I want you to do is I want you to be faithful. So now you bring this back to what I was originally talking about. So like in your life, if you're going to be a light and you're going to attract people, you have to start being faithful to the point that people see it and it motivates them to be faithful. Right? What we have happening now in the world is a whole bunch of spineless people that fold as soon as they receive a little bit of pressure. And once you start folding, that's it, you're done. You've lost your faith because you're not believing that God can take care of you. Right? So people are, instead of getting canceled or kicked off of whatever or, whatever you want to come up with, they're folding. Well, if nobody around me is standing up for the gospel, why am I going to stand up for the gospel? As a person who may be on the fence about believing, if heaven is so awesome, yet you won't lose your job over heaven, then why am I ever going to be interested in heaven? Because obviously it's not as awesome as your job, or your social life, or that friend, or that desire, right? That sinful desire in whatever department you want to throw it into. Patience. there's two things with patience. You have to be patient with people. I've learned this. This took me a while to learn, but I've learned it now, and now I stand back and watch, and everybody else flips out while I'm just going like this. I'll just wait. It'll be all right. You have to be patient with people. I mean, you could tell somebody something 100 times. They might do it on 101, but you got to be there for 101 for them to do it. Then you also have to be patient with yourself. How many people have a different time schedule than God has, apparently? Raise your hand. Hello. Been fighting it my whole life. I'm ready to retire. I'm ready to kick off into the Caribbean and do nothing for the rest of my life. I go tomorrow. God's like, nope, it's not time. So I have to be patient. I say, I'm not sure if it's ever going to happen. I really want it to happen, but God has called me to do something, so I'm going to continue to do it. Right? So patience comes in two forms. Love. We talked about this. How many people do you say you love that you actually don't love? Fix that. Fix it. That means that if you have a family member, I'll just give you an example, right? You have a family member that gets on your nerves and you start treating them differently because they get on your nerves. Stop. Because I'm sure a lot of us get on Jesus' nerves. He still loves us. He still treats us all exactly the same way. He still reaches out to us, looks for us, longs for us, worries about us, watches over us. And if you think about it from a failing church perspective, why would anybody go to a building where people don't love them? They wouldn't. A lot of our problem in this building specifically is we treat church like an event. Right? So when does church start? Why is Jeffrey the only one speaking? When does church start? What time do you have to be here by? Pedro, 10:30. I wish y'all would get here by 10:30. You know why? Because you would experience something called community. Because you're not treating church like an event. You're treating it like somewhere you want to be. So you actually come early. It'd be weird. How many of you have ever been here so early that you've seen the worship team practice? You're on the worship team. Put your hand down. No, don't even try. And I'm not saying this to attack you. I'm saying this to open your eyes. This is not a problem. This is a problem in this church, but it's a problem in the world. We're treating God like he's on our schedule. It doesn't work like that. Could you imagine sitting in prison, writing a love letter to a church, basically, which is what these letters are, or in this case, it's to Timothy, who was his, son, so to speak, right? Can you imagine you're sitting rotting in prison writing a letter? Totally Christ-focused. Perseverance. We're still only in verse 10. We probably have to pick this up next week. Perseverance. How many of you have ever started something at church and not finished it? Almost everybody has. You know why? Because you don't persevere. So this is what happens. You say, I'm going to go. I'm going to start going to church. You go. You show up. It's good. It motivates you. You kind of like it. You don't want to admit it, but you kind of like it. So you go a couple Sundays and then something comes up. And it requires you to make a judgment call. And the something that comes up could be anything. It could be work related, it could be fun related, it could be health related, it could be bad choices related. But something comes up and you have a choice in front of you where you either choose to go to church or you choose not to. And the perseverance comes in when you choose to go to church, right? I'm not talking about you going on vacation with your family or a business trip or whatever. Don't guilt yourself into constantly being here. I'm talking about when you make a choice to not come even though you're able to. Or you sign up to do something. We have a sign-up sheet in the back to clean the church. All you have to do is come in here every 2 weeks. It's not even once a week. You come in here every 2 weeks, you vacuum this place, you give everything a little wipey wipe, and make sure the bathroom's clean. Takes 30 minutes tops. Maybe a little longer. It does take forever to vacuum this place. I hate doing it. I haven't done it in a while. Thank goodness. I got other people doing it. So, you sign up to do it. Next time rolls around, you're like, nobody will notice. Because you don't have the perseverance. And the model for, this is where we're going to stop tonight. We're going to stop on perseverance. We'll do the rest of this next week. The model of perseverance, do you know who it comes from? The answer is always Jesus, y'all. Come on. And where does that model come from? What part of Jesus' life stands out as perseverance? No. Long before the cross. Garden of Gethsemane. You know why? Because he knew everything that was coming. But he did it anyway. He begged for it to stop, but did it anyway. So you take those aspects, just those aspects we talked about tonight. You take perseverance, you take real love for people, not fake love, not the, hey, how you doing? Yeah, you should come to church. God, I hate her. Right? Not that. Real love. You honestly own up to yourself that you have a purpose. Because a lot of us avoid that because we don't want to admit it, because then when we do, we're committed. Right? Own it. You have a purpose. God created you for a purpose. Exercise your faith. So regardless of the outcome, I'm going to stand up for God. That means when you're hanging out with your friends on a Friday night and things go a little south, you stand up for God. You will draw people to you. You treat people with true love, you will draw people to you. You have patience with people, you will draw them to you. How many people do you love that you don't have patience with? If you're married, hello. You love your spouse. That's why you married them. You didn't marry them because, they knew how to tie shoelaces. They're the first people we lose patience with. So I want you to focus on, just focus on these this week, right? You've only got to go till Sunday, because Sunday you're getting a whole nother batch of this. You focus on purpose, faith, patience, love, and perseverance. And see what happens. And then nothing's going to happen overnight. You're not going to change anybody's life. Well, you may. I don't know. I'm not going to limit God, Logan. You may see a difference. You more than likely won't. And so what will happen is on Sunday you'll want to stop. You'll want to give up. Exercise the perseverance. We'll pick this up next week. That's it for tonight. I want to talk to y'all, but I want to talk to y'all off camera. So just hang about for a second. Let me go turn this thing off.